Before we start, I want to borrow something from you. Your eyes and your ears, just for a few minutes. Because what I'm about to show you is not just about orange juice. It's about us. We've all been getting squeezed by this economy, just like an orange in one of those automatic orange juicers. Round and full of potential until the system grabs hold, grinds us down, and drains every drop of value out. All for someone else's glass. And now the so-called experts keep telling us this is just how it has to be, that our future has to get worse before it gets better. Well, fuck that. It's not in our nature to accept the status quo. It's in our nature to fight back, to take what's been squeezed out of us and turn it into something new, something that works for us, not against us. I'm gonna break down our economy in the simplest, most fundamental way possible, like taking apart a juicer to see how it really works. Because if we can understand the mechanism, we can redesign it. We can build an economy that actually lives up to our creed, one of fairness, creativity, and shared prosperity. Now, let's take a look at the juicers. All right, welcome to the orange juice economy. This is my illustration of how us oranges experience the economy. This is us oranges, and this is the juicer, and this whole thing is the economy. All right, so first let's start with the inside of the juicer, which is outlined in blue. We've got gears and pressure blocks to squeeze the oranges as they come through. So we've got a state and local pressure block, and then we've got owner blocks. They don't represent the owners that come through the juicer, but they represent the owners that don't come through the juicer. And all this juice will flow up to these giant oranges. But this block will squeeze some of the juice out to fund the state and local government, but the rest of the juice will go down to lubricate the gears in a process called mandatory lubrication. You could call them subsidies. And then the rest of the juice will come out of the bottom of the juicer. So let's start with this top one, the tax and state and local. This represents public flow. The next set is the rent and mortgage gear, which represents private flow. Next we have the productivity gear, which represents creation flow. Next is the necessities gear, which represents consumption flow. Next is the surplus gear, which represents desire flow. We have the pollution piped out of the juicer, so the work environment for the oranges is cleaner and more productive. Now this will make some land uninhabitable, so we have these rivers here and the people live on the outside. There are some oranges that live in the river because they can't make it across the bridges. And these rivers represent chaos, poverty, instability, incarceration, and violence. These gears actually create the river, and they all have different functions. So the tax gear will add to the river by extracting from labor. The rent and mortgage gear will add by extracting from the human need of having somewhere to live. The productivity gear will add by extracting from efficient operations. And then the necessities gear will add to the river by extracting from the need to survive. And then the surplus gear will act as an extraction amplifier because it's money that could have been spent on other things, but because it's spent on this, it takes money away from the other things, which amplify their contribution to the river. Now, humans have always had to tread across this river ever since the discovery of horseback riding. But in the United States, we created these bridges so everybody has the ability to access safety, prosperity, and belonging. The problem was when we started the United States, we didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't build the bridges for everybody. So here there's holes to represent the unfinished bridge. They cross the bridges to go live, and they cross back across the bridges to go back to work. We have a path that comes out of the juicer. This is the juice path that all the juice runs to the federal government and state back to the state and local governments. Now when the oranges come out of here, they can choose to go either way. They can go to the social capitalist highway, or they can go to the free capitalist highway. Now, most of the oranges will always be going to one highway or the other. They change sides all the time, depending on what needs are being verbalized by which side. In physical reality, these lands are not separated. I just separated them to illustrate the difference of opinion. Either way, the roads end up back in the same place every day where everybody starts their work. Neither path will fundamentally change the operation of the juicer, but we still call this separation of the pathways the choice crossroad. So this land is where we process potential into value, and we use fear and need to get the oranges to come here to generate that value. Now, most oranges might stay at home, but we use fear of being homeless in order to keep them going back into the juicer, and then the need to survive to also encourage them to get back in the juicer. All right, next let's go to the oranges up top. We have 3 different kinds of oranges. We have the people oranges, we have the property oranges, and we have the business oranges. Now, property oranges are a combination of the land and assets. So they're 2 different things in one, and we call that property. Next is the business oranges. Those represent all the businesses and corporations that we can fit into the juicer. Some get too big and we put those over here. But for the rest of the businesses and corporations that are small enough to fit in the juicer, we put those through. Next, we have the people oranges. So we call them juiceless oranges. You can also call them homeless oranges. These oranges encourage the next 2 classes to keep going into the juicer. Now, without these oranges, these first 2 oranges wouldn't go in the juicer. So these are essential oranges. Now, they don't have any juice of their own, but juice does flow through them down to the necessity sphere. Next, we have the working oranges, which represent the bottom 50% of income earners. Then we have the middle oranges, which represent the middle 40% of income earners. Then we have the upper middle oranges, which represent the top 10% of income earners. And then we have the rich oranges, which represent the top 1% of income earners. And these are the biggest oranges we can fit into the juicer. But once they get bigger than this, we move them over here to act as oversight for the orange juice economy. Now, all orange juice economies have always done this. They always put the biggest oranges in charge of the economy. The problem with being in charge of the economy is that if the economy fails, then everyone is going to blame you for the economy failing. And in the past, what would happen is these oranges would be overthrown by all these oranges. Over time, these oranges have figured out how to best deal with crisis. Because crisis, they figured out over time, is a natural thing that occurs when wealth becomes too concentrated. To protect them from these crises, they've adapted many layers in order to weather the storm, you could say. That way, when crisis comes, instead of it being a negative thing, they can actually benefit from it and become bigger oranges. Now, these layers, I symbolize them as like a shield, a sword, and a cape. The shield are banks, the sword is the market, and the cape I call trust. And I also give them a big head because they have the benefit of long sight, because usually these people have been in power for multiple generations, so they have a long window into the past and a lot of good education since. Not only do they protect our orange juice economy, but they protect other orange juice economies. All right, now let's talk about the operation of the juicer. Let's go ahead and feed in one group of oranges at a time. All right, the property oranges are going to give us a place to do all these things. Then we'll throw on the business oranges. That'll give us a place for all of our oranges to work. All right, then we'll go ahead and throw in the working oranges. Now these oranges will come out the same size pretty much every day. So these oranges don't really benefit from the juicer, but they do a majority of the work because they have such a large group. Now when they come down here to cross the river, the bridge is full of holes that are too big for them to cross over. So most of these oranges fall through the bridge into the river and then ride the river up here to come around back to the juicer. All right, next will be our middle oranges. Now these oranges are gonna give us more juice, and when they come out of the juicer, they're gonna have a little more juice than the classiform, but when they cross the bridges, the holes are still a little big for them. So some of them will fall in, but most of them will get across to safety, prosperity, and belonging. All right, next we have the upper middle oranges. Now these ones are gonna give us the most juice coming through the juicer. And when they come out and cross the bridge, the holes are too small for them to fall in. So they're gonna have no problem getting over to safety, prosperity, and belonging. And then last we have the rich oranges. Now these oranges are gonna come out fatter and fatter every day. And they're gonna have zero problem getting over to safety, prosperity, and belonging. Now after we run all of our oranges through the juicer, the juice that's left trickles down to the federal government and gives the federal government most of its funding, but every year comes up short of juice. We still don't have enough juice to fix the bridges or even enough juice to maintain the bridges. So these guys come to the rescue and loan us some juice, and we filter that down through the juicer in order to have enough juice to at least maintain the bridges that we have. A majority of the juice from this juicer flows back the giant oranges to increase their size. And since this juicer was constructed, these giant oranges have got bigger and bigger every year to the point where at this point in history, these are the biggest these oranges have ever been. Now, the reason they got so big is because of how efficient this juicer is at extracting juice from the oranges and sending it to the giant oranges. Growing up in this orange juice economy, we're taught that the orange juice economy was designed for everyone. But clearly it's not. The choice crossroad is obviously an illusion. If the bridges are not designed for everyone, but clearly we need to rethink how we build these bridges. So let's try to think about a different kind of juicer we can make, looking at how this juicer is constructed. Now, property oranges, land is something that we didn't create, and the house or the assets is something we created. So really, we should only be taxing the land, not the thing that we create. We shouldn't be punished for creating. So no on the property oranges. Let's just not like that. Not with land and assets combined. Plus assets. Taxing assets and assessing value of assets is an incredible task that would take an army of accountants. So yeah, let's leave assets out for the juicer we're gonna make. Next is businesses. I don't think the businesses should have to go through the juicer and pay taxes, especially starting out as a small business. Doesn't really encourage a lot of people to start businesses. So let's take the business oranges off. And then the people oranges. Now this is where the true value actually is. Because without people oranges, the orange juice economy would be worth nothing. Like imagine New York City. If all the people oranges in the world decided we're never gonna go to New York City again, then New York City would be worth nothing. It'd be worth nothing. Because the people are the ones that bring the value. So let's take the people oranges off too. Why not, instead of juicing all the people with these gears, What if we just juiced all the gears instead? Yeah, let's try it. This next orange juice economy is about everyday people pressing their own juice, squeezing value from cooperation instead of division. Alright, so here we have the other juicer. This one I got out of a book published in 1879, written by a guy named Henry George. As you can see, this one's a lot more simple. In the other juicer we had 3 kinds of oranges, and this one we only have one, which is land. But it's not like the other juicer where the land is also the assets on top, called property. In this one, it's only the land underneath the assets that we're talking about here. We have only one gear, the value tax gear, that taxes land that's used by the people, which is stewarded by the government. We're going to use the value tax to juice the land and get all the taxes to fund the government and social projects that go to the people. And then right here we have a pollution filter. That's going to get any of our land that has pollution on it to pay for the pollution that they create on the land. So if they create pollution or they degrade the quality of the land, then they have to pay for that. And then down here we have the local, state, and federal government, which the juice directly goes to, which ensures we can actually fund all the programs. And because we're doing it this way, we can always have these branches of government funded. Because if we need more tax, we just turn up the tax knob. If we need less tax, we turn down the tax knob. And then these branches of government interact directly with the people that they govern. They don't interact with the businesses. They only interact with the land that the businesses are on. The government is only responsible for the land. It makes the government's job a lot more straightforward, and it gets rid of a lot of need for politics because the system is so simple that everybody can understand it. So we don't need some kind of leader to try to explain this to us. Then we have the people here who are surrounded by belonging, safety, and prosperity, because this is essentially the mission of the government. This is the whole point of their existence, is to create this kind of safety net around people. We have all the different kinds of people here. They're all in the same place. They all have the same opportunities to interact with the land. And they interact with the land in these different ways here. Through production, commerce, and residence, they create economic activity in productive ways. Through passive enjoyment, they create more desirable land. Stewardship, which we do by maintaining the land, which is an incentive for us to care for the land. And then we have land improvement, which is infrastructural, which gives us community benefit. Governance, we do that through land use planning, giving us valuations on land. And that creates transparent and democratic governance of the land. Cultural engagement with the land, that's through community enrichment, and that restores cultural connection to the land. And then we have ecological, which is done through restoration of land. That makes land an active feedback participant by having this restoration approach to land. And then, depending on how we use the land is going to depend on how we tax the land. Also, if there's rare resources on the land, of course, those are going to be taxed too, because the owner of the land didn't create those resources. They're just paying for the privilege to use the land exclusively. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. That's how it all goes. Really easy for everybody to understand it. We don't need an expert to explain how our economy works to us anymore in a system like this. The state and local government no longer have any involvement in making decisions about our economy. That's now done by all the people that interact with the economy. The role of the government changes from being a tax collector to being a steward of the land. So then the government becomes a trustee over the land, not the master over the people. All right, so we got some benefits over here of this juicer over the other juicer. The first one is death of speculation. That's because we're taxing the value out of the land and funneling it back into the community. Speculation has no place in an economy like that. Next is unburdened capital and labor. Since the single tax replaces income, sales tax, and corporate or business tax, all that capital that's stored away in speculation becomes liquid again. The next one is true equal opportunity, because in the other juicer, you have the ability to create monopolies in that system. In this one, you can't create monopolies because everyone has equal claim to the land. Next, we have efficient self-correcting cities. And this is because with the land value tax, improvements aren't taxed, which encourages companies to improve and have the most efficient properties on the most expensive pieces of land. In this system, rather than cities growing outward, they grow inward. And then infrastructure becomes cheaper per capita. And then we have financial stability. This is because, with the other one, we were taxing labor and productivity and all this stuff, and that fluctuates. But in this one, we only tax land, which doesn't fluctuate. There's always the same amount of land. So that gives us financial stability. And because of the speculation disappearing, that also makes our economy a lot more stable. And then we have automatic public revenue, because the land doesn't move, so we don't have to go find it. We automatically tax the land every month. Taxes will always be coming in. And then we have environmental regeneration, because we have this pollution filter, and we are taxing people that are degrading the land or creating pollution, so we have money to regenerate the environment. And then we have social cohesion and moral balance after using this system for a while, because people normalize it and they intuitively grasp the concept that no one else made the land. No owner of the land made that land. The land was there before them. So in that sense, it's a common inheritance of everyone, not the people who got there to buy it first. So here's why I made this video. First, to show you that there is another door into the future. A future that isn't pre-written by the same people squeezing us dry. Second, to inspire the 99% to stop fighting each other, to look past the noise and polarization and start grouping up. Because the truth is, nothing is going to change in our favor until we agree that the foundation of this economy has to be rebuilt. Not rebranded, not patched, restructured. Thanks for watching my first video. Any part you want me to go further into, drop it in the comments. If this gave you any value, please share. And let's get more eyes and ears on this conversation. And if you're ready to stop getting squeezed and start moving our economy in a positive direction, reach out to me directly. Getting an entire country to participate won't be easy, but it doesn't take millions. Just one person in each neighborhood to spark it.